What's going on, you guys? So I thought about going live, but I don't know if I got the time. So I figured a regular video would do just fine. Hit that like button for your boy. Will Canelo fight Charlo?
He's scared. Where you at, Cinnamon?
Will Canelo fight Charlo?
Payday. You want payday? I know that.
One thing we do know is that Canelo's going to have to fight somebody that boxing fans care about. His former opponent, or the guy that he was perceived to be facing, was Makabu. He has a mandatory coming up next week, so he could possibly wait on this guy. And then you're hearing rumors about Joe Smith Jr. But will he fight Jermall Charlo? It's a fight that boxing fans have been talking about. Even Oscar De La Hoya came out recently and said now is the time for Charlo and Canelo to fight. And I agree. Now is the time. It's time for Canelo and Charlo to mix it up. But N.Bernstein, legendary trainer, has some unkind words, to say the very least, in regards to Canelo Alvarez. And then if you're a boxing fan for an extended period of time, guys like Juan Manuel Marquez and N.Bernstein are two guys who's very vocal about how they feel about Canelo Alvarez, and it ain't good. But N.Bernstein came out and said, let me show it to you guys. He came out and says that Canelo doesn't impress. He says Canelo doesn't impress. And he says things like this in the past. But yeah, he says here, legendary trainer N.Bernstein says he's not impressed with what he's seen from Canelo Alvarez in his fights. And he doesn't see him as the greatest Mexican fighter of all time. Like many people, Bernstein is unmoved by the opposition that Canelo Alvarez has been facing. He's never in any fights viewed as 50-50 matchups or even 60-40. Canelo is fighting guys that have no chance of beating him. And the reason for that is he's picking weaker opposition. Yeah, they were champions, but in name only. Bernstein doesn't see Canelo going the extra mile for his performances and picking out good opposition to face. Quality guys like David Benavidez, Dave Morrell Jr., Demetrius Andrade, Arthur Beterbiev, Jermall Charlo will allow Canelo to impress his fans. And you know what? I agree 100% with this. As a former Canelo Alvarez fan, I see the bullshit that what Canelo was doing. And after the Kovalev fight left a sour taste in my mouth. And then he went on his European tour. And this is what guys like N.Bernstein is talking about. He's fighting these guys that really had nothing for him. But these guys here, the David Benavidez, the Dave Morrell Jr., the Demetrius Andrade, Arthur Beterbiev, the Jermall Charlos are some names that boxing fans will be impressed by. Canelo is a fighter, like I said many times before, that can do whatever he wants in the sport of boxing. Nobody in boxing can fight 4 times a year, let alone during the pandemic. Canelo can do that. No matter who Canelo fights, he's going to sell out the arenas. No matter who he fights, he's going to do at least over 500, 600 pay-per-view buys. So Canelo Alvarez he's out of any excuses that fans tend to like to have for certain fighters. Canelo Alvarez can do what he wants in the sport of boxing. Then it says here, Bernstein, Canelo lacks a career-defining fight. He says, I recognize that he's a great fighter and an athlete because he trains very well, and his trainer, Eddie Reynoso, prepares him very well. Agreed. Canelo does train hard. He works hard. Eddie Reynoso done a good job of preparing Canelo Alvarez up to this point, right? You know, Canelo Alvarez, despite all the bullshit and the politics that surrounds him, he's a hell of a fighter. But we need to see him in there with some guys with a pulse, a Charlo. But N.Bernstein doesn't agree with this. He says Canelo's not being one of the greatest Mexican fighters. He said because the backbone of the Mexican boxing comes from Mexican boxers, and he's on a path to that select group of fighters. It doesn't matter that he's won the titles that he's won and the money he's making. I recognize he's a great fighter, but there's still a little more he needs to do to be in the hearts of Mexican boxing fans. What's missing is one or two fights like the type of Julio Cesar Chavez had and others. I agree. You know, Julio Cesar Chavez fought all the killers. He didn't dug no black fighters or anything of the sort, right? He fought. He came over here and he fought. You know, say what you want about Julio Cesar Chavez and his quote unquote padded record and all that. Dude fought everybody, man. He fought everybody. Pernell Whitaker, Oscar De La Hoya. I mean, he was fighting people, real guys. He says he fights and he keeps fighting. But personally, for me, as a trainer of many fighters, he doesn't fulfill me. He hasn't had a fight that really captured the hearts of people. He fights and wins millions of dollars, and that's good. It makes me happy that he's having success. But he hasn't had that one fight that we all want to see. He hasn't had it, said Bernstein. And see, when I come out and say stuff like this as a fan, right, they'll call me racist and things of that nature. But when Nacho Bernstein say it, well, you know, let's see what you guys have to say now. Let's see what people have to say now. I mean, is he wrong? As a fight fan, you would like to see the guy that's considered the best, right, fight the other top guys. You don't want to see him just fight anybody, right? He says here, there haven't been any fights from Canelo where he captured the hearts of the people. And the reason for that is he failed to fight the opposition that he needed to press the fans. And then there's a list of guys that these are fights that Canelo needs to capture the hearts of millions of the minds of fans. It says David Benavidez, Dave Morrell Jr., Gennady Golovkin 3, Jermall Charlo, Demetrius Andrade, Joe Smith Jr., Dimitri Bivol, Arthur Beterbiev, Lawrence Okoli, and Marius Briedis. All very good names, solid names, and names that's respectable, right? All these names here on this list is guys that I would like to see Canelo fight. I would like to see him fight any of these guys on this list. But I think Marius Briedis and Lawrence Okoli is totally out of the picture. Too big. Canelo's not going to deal with them. They're not that type of cruiserweights, right? Artur Beterbiev is a killer. Happy birthday to Artur Beterbiev. I believe he just had a birthday. Monster, right? Just a monster. Artur Beterbiev is a monster. Dimitri Bivol, very solid, very strong fighter at 175. Will Canelo fight him? Ain't no telling, right? Joe Smith Jr. seems like the most likely guy, in my opinion. Not a horrible fighter, but not necessarily like a great type of fighter. And it's kind of right up Canelo's alley from what he's recently been doing, right? But I respect Joe Smith Jr. And I would like to see the guy have an opportunity, to be honest. You know, he's one of those part-time boxers that was construction work. He's a blue-collar type of guy. You know, Joe Smith Jr., he just, you know, grabs his lunch pail, just goes to work, you know, and he don't do too much talking, you know. So, you know, I feel Joe Smith Jr. would probably be a likely fight for Canelo, honestly. Demetrius Andrade, it ain't happening.
Payday, you want payday. I know that. Hey, you are a horrible fighter, man. You never gonna get that fight, man. You are a horrible fighter. Horrible fighter. Horrible fighter.
I mean, that's what he said in regards to Demetrius Andrade. You know, he's not going to get the fight. A lot of people are telling Demetrius Andrade he's not going to get the fight. The Charlos told him he's not getting the fight. Boo Boo Andrade is pretty much blacklisted from boxing. It's unfortunate, right? Then we got Jermall Charlo. Is the guy that you're hearing whispers in the streets, the boxing streets, that Jermall Charlo and Canelo Alvarez, you know, we just got to wait for it. We don't want to spoil it. We don't want to ruin it. We don't want to keep talking about it. We want this to happen behind the scenes. We don't need to hear about no numbers. We don't need to hear about any splits. We don't need to hear about who's the A side, B side. We don't need to hear none of that. Just make the fight. Gennady Golovkin 3, that's highly likely at this point. Triple G is almost 40 years old. He's looking to fight Ryota Murata in Japan. I heard for a ton of money, crazy amount of money to go over there in Japan and fight. Triple G is at the twilight of his career now. If they was going to fight for a third time, it should have been happened probably about 3 years ago, almost like 6 months after the second fight, right? Then we got Dave Morrell Jr., who has what? I forgot his record. I forgot his record on top of my head, but he has less than 15 fights, if I'm not mistaken. Cuban, southpaw, big, rangy, talent, speed, power. I mean, Canelo Alvarez is not gonna go anywhere near this kid. He's a young guy. He got a belt, he could, something could happen if the WBA pressed it, but we know that's not gonna happen. Then we got David Benavidez. Another guy that boxing fans are really, really looking for Canelo to fight. Big, got power, got hand speed, tough. Um, and it's a really, really a real challenge for Canelo Alvarez, right? It's a real challenge for Canelo Alvarez, David Benavidez. All these guys on this list will pose somewhat of a challenge for Canelo. Maybe Triple G at this point at 40 years old. I wouldn't really say Triple G at this point because he's 40 and he hasn't fought in, man, I can't even remember last name fought. Camille Zameda, was it? Was it Camille the Killer Zameda? I can't remember who it was, but Triple G hasn't fought in a while. So, yeah, I mean, that's a good list of guys. And Canelo get a lot of respect from boxing fans, even the Mexican boxing fans who may not favor him will really respect him if he fight any of these guys. This is all boxing fans' action of Canelo Alvarez. And they are right. When you watch his fights, when he fights somebody who don't really respect him, and I said this before, the fights look very different when Canelo don't fight guys that really respect him. When it's either a draw, it's a controversial decision. It's something strange, right? Right here, it says Canelo's most challenging fights were against Gennady Golovkin, Erislandy Lara, Austin Trout, and Floyd Mayweather. And guess what? None of those guys went into that fight with him, respecting him. And those fights, well, guess how they looked? He didn't really separate himself from any of these guys. But when Canelo was able to pick and choose who he wants to fight, and he's fighting these guys and these smaller guys and stuff like that, he has his way with him, and it almost looks like a sparring match, and it just doesn't look good. It just doesn't look good. He says here, if these were the only fighters that Canelo fought for the remainder of his career, he will shape his legacy in a way that is well beyond he recently did in becoming the undisputed champ. Yeah. If he fought any of these fighters here, man, beating any of these dudes really would be better than what he did at 168 currently. It would. Because a lot of these guys are undefeated. A lot of these guys are undefeated. One loss, maybe, Triple G, one loss, a draw, still, Triple G. Say what you want. I'm not necessarily a big fan of the guy, but Triple G is Triple G, right? These guys are killers right here. It says, since many boxing fans believe Canelo deserves losses, and this guy right here who wrote this article may not be necessarily a big Canelo fan, so it's not me. This is his words, right? He says, since many boxing fans believe Canelo deserves losses in all 5 of those fights, you can't call them career-defining. At this point, I don't think we're going to see Canelo have a career-defining fight because he's only facing gimme opponents. See, and it's not just guys like Bernstein, your boy Bushido, and others. I mean, a lot of people are saying the same stuff about Canelo. And Bernstein says this, 5 Canelo fights that leave much. He says, when I was in Las Vegas, I went to the hotel because they kicked us out. I got 3 calls from people saying that these are bad trainers that said to me, and I watched the farce of a fight with Canelo. Caleb Plant fell without getting hit hard. Wow. He said, I didn't see it, Canelo Plant. I can't give my opinion, Bernstein says. But those people told me that Plant threw it. Hey, I like these guys, man. These hardcore old school dudes who's gonna tell you straight like it is, don't care how you feel. Love these guys, man. Whether I agree or not, right? He's telling you straight how he feels. He said people telling me he threw that fight. He threw that fight. That's what people saying. He says that makes like 5 fights for Canelo that lifts a lot of doubt, said Bernstein, without naming the other 4 questionable fights of Canelo that were questionable. Because they can fool you and the fans, but not me, because I've had a shit ton of time watching boxing, said Bernstein. Bernstein didn't say what 5 fights of Canelo's that left a lot of doubt, but he could be thinking of these. Gennady Golovkin, 1 and 2, Austin Trout, Erislandy Lara, Sergey Kovalev. Yeah, pretty much. Although Canelo stopped Kovalev in the 12th fight, the way the Russian fighter fought was strange, as if he wasn't trying very hard. Thank you. I thought I was salute to this guy in this article, right? Because even though these guys over here on Boxing News 24 may kind of throw their own little opinion on a lot of things, I mean, I agree. That fight with Kovalev, like I said earlier in this video, it left a sour taste in my mouth. I was a big Canelo fan prior to that fight. That fight was like it's just like I hit the twilight zone. It was crazy. 1 minute things was going okay, the next minute Kovalev got knocked out. It was the craziest shit ever. The fans didn't even know how to react from that. I remember it vividly. The fans who had seen Kovalev fight in the past were shocked at how he fought against Canelo. He didn't load up with his punches and mainly jabbed and moved around the ring against the smaller Canelo. He appeared to be going easy on Canelo. That's right. That's right.
He's scared.
That's one of the reasons you have to worry a little about Canelo's next fight. If he chooses to face WBC Cruiser champ Alunga Makabu, the guy we talked about earlier next. Yeah, see, this is, he may be waiting on Makabu, people. Michael Benson came out a few days ago and said that we are not going to like who Canelo is going to fight. Right? He literally came out and told the fans, like, look, man, we're not going to like who he's about to fight next. He says he and Canelo look too friendly with each other during the WBC convention and look similar to how Canelo and Kovalev were when they interacted before their fight. Yes, Canelo and Kovalev was very, very buddy. It was terrible. It was terrible to see as a fight fan. Yeah, I understand that not every fighter is going to have animosity towards each other, but when you see these guys consistently do this with Canelo and then you see how the fight plays out, it's like, okay, what's going on here? Versus guys like Lara, who wasn't nobody buddy. Guys like Triple G, nobody buddy, right? And they went out there and, the fights didn't look as easy for Canelo Alvarez as it's been looking recently. It says, will Makabu take it easy on Canelo out of gratitude of being given the fight? You've heard the saying, don't bite the hand that feeds. When you're getting handpicked by Canelo for a mega $1 million payday that will set you up for life, it's got to be challenging to want to hit the Mexican superstar with any hard punches. You'd be so grateful for him. Wow, this guy is on point. Whoever this dude is, he is on point. That's exactly how I be thinking. That's exactly how I be thinking. Ain't that what I be saying, you guys? All the time. They happy to be here and they don't want to mess the money up. Hey, I'm not gonna I ain't gonna say too much more. Y'all know what hey. I'm not the only one saying this stuff, people. This is my first time even seeing this article, right? I saw the title and I figured, let me go ahead and add this to the whole Charlo thing. And I'm reading it for the first time. And this guy's saying the same thing I've been saying. So it was really good, right? Canelo, you got to get the people something more. Canelo fans, y'all gonna have to step on the gas on them too. It says this writer agreed that Caleb Plant appeared to go down without getting hit hard by Canelo in Canelo in their fight last November. Plant looked like he fell over from a glancing blow and then was finished off. Hey, Caleb Plant in that fight left a bad taste in my mouth after I seen the replay of that 9th round when he was talking to him. It really, gave me the impression that he wasn't really out there to win like he made fans believe earlier on, with Caleb Plant. Then it says Alvarez doesn't go the extra mile. I mean, I guess this is a long read. These dudes going in on him. He said, I respect the opinion of Juan Manuel Marquez, but I think very soon he will give us the fight that we all want, and he will enter a select group of the greatest fighters, said Bernstein, reacting to Marquez saying that Canelo would never be the greatest Mexican boxer ever. Excuse me, the greatest Mexican boxer ever. I still have to see him in a fight where he looks sensational, Bernstein said, because he wins and looks good, but he doesn't go the extra mile. Canelo has never been able to fight hard without taking lots of rest and breaks after throwing a handful of punches. The stamina problems that we saw from Canelo earlier in his career when he was in his 20s have gotten far, far worse now that he's in his 30s and is campaigning at 168. If Canelo attempts to go the extra mile in his fights, he'd gas out and will be at the mercy of his opposition. But his trainer, manager, Eddie Reynoso, has carefully selected weak opposition at 168 to help him keep winning. Dang, this dude, and y'all think your boy Bushido's vicious, right? This dude is just telling you straight like it is. Right? He said Canelo is carefully selecting weak opposition. I mean, this is what a lot of boxing fans are saying, people. Except for the diehard Canelo fans, a mass majority of boxing fans feel that Canelo could do more. Reynoso has been wise enough not to push Canelo by matching him up against someone that can give him issues and expose his poor stamina, like David Benavidez, Jermall Charlo, or Arthur Beterbiev. You can argue that Reynoso treats Canelo like he's an old car with 300,000 miles on it. When you get in an old car, you can't push too hard without breaking down and needing repairs. Reynoso said that the badly flawed champion at permitting at 168 and then pointed Canelo in that direction to take advantage of him. Yeah, pretty much. And Canelo came out recently and said that he'll fight whoever Reynoso wants him to fight. He's putting it all on Reynoso now. But this is pretty long. I mean, really, they just going in. They really just going in on him here. They really just going in on him. Wow. I mean, Canelo Alvarez, people. Will he fight Jermall Charlo? Will the face of boxing, Saul Canelo Alvarez, fight Jermall Charlo? Right? I think it's time for Canelo got enough money. He's wealthy. I think he's beyond rich. I think he's about wealthy now, right? Canelo can go out and start giving the fans these big fights. But really, I think Eddie Reynoso's playing. He's carefully matching Canelo up against certain guys. He's not. I don't really see it, but I'm being optimistic that this Charlo thing is a real thing. Like I said, Oscar De La Hoya came out recently and said now's the time to make the Charlo fight. Oscar De La Hoya has nothing to do with Canelo Alvarez anymore, but he said now is the time. Maybe because they seen Charlo didn't look too good in his last fight against Juan Montiel, right? They seen him. He didn't look good against Montiel. So, and then he hasn't really been too active, and they see him on these videos, seemingly like under the influence. Like, see, look at that. These people don't know they Charlos. Hold up. Look at that. Wrong Charlo, dude. Wait, when did he say this? This was November 7th. He said this. But look, wrong Charlo, man. Come on, man. Know your Charlos, bro. Know your Charlos, bro. But yeah, man. It'll be Charlo moving up in weight. It'll be his first time fighting at that weight. I mean, if Canelo Alvarez offering Jermall Charlo this fight, he needs to go for it. He needs to go for it. Don't whatever Canelo's offering, take it and hop in the ring. Because unlike guys like Spence and Crawford, who's not too far beyond each other as far as popularity and money and stuff like that, Canelo Alvarez is Canelo Alvarez all the way up here, and then there's everybody else all the way. You know what I'm saying? So you got to kind of just get in the ring and do the work. Charlo's been back in the gym training. I've been peeping game. He's been training. So he may got something lined up. So it should be pretty interesting to see who Canelo decides to pick. Here we go, Oscar again saying it. I think Charlo just earned his way to Canelo, just like now. Charlo is one of those late bloomers. He's a great champ. There's fighters that kind of gain notoriety later in their careers, and you have to really establish yourself. Right now is the perfect time to make the fight. I agree, Oscar. I agree. He's still promoting Canelo Alvarez and matchmaking for Canelo Alvarez. He says here, has Charlo earned his shot? So people was talking about this a day ago. People talking about this. Has Charlo earned his shot? So Canelo Alvarez is going to have to really look into this Charlo thing if they're not already. I'm hearing whispers that they talking about the scene, but I'm not going to put it out there as 100% news. But yeah, N.Bernstein had quite a bit to say about Canelo Alvarez, you guys, and it wasn't too nice. But is he telling the truth? Hey, a lot of Canelo fans may disagree. Me personally, I think Canelo Alvarez can do a lot more. If you're the face of boxing, you need to take the sport by the reins and show everybody that you truly are the best, that you truly are, everything that they say, everything that they claim, right? Because going up into 168 pounds and beating up on Makabu, that's not good. That's not good, and it's not good enough. But going up in there and facing a Charlo May 7th, that will be huge. Like, subscribe, holla at your boy. Peace out.